In August of 1980, a concert ended with cars on fire, people injured, and a venue that swore rock shows forever. And all happened on a tour supporting this album right here, Cultösaurus Erectus by Blue Öyster Cult. I'll be talking about that and more as I discuss the album in question, Cultösaurus Erectus by Blue Öyster Cult. This will be part of a series where I talk about the Blue Öyster Cult albums from this box set here, which includes 3 studio albums and 2 live albums. So I will be reviewing the 3 studio albums, which will be this one here, Fire of Unknown Origin, and this one right here, which doesn't get talked about that much, Revolution by Night. But if anyone wants me to review any of the other ones, even if I don't own it on a physical copy, I'm willing to review the other ones the same way I did with those ZZ Top albums. So let's get back to this. Let me first talk about what inspired the album. The album Cultösaurus Erectus was primarily inspired by Blue Öyster Cult's desire to return to a heavier, weird roots after the critical and commercial failure of their previous, more pop-oriented record, Mirrors. Now, personally, I like the album Mirrors, and I may do a video on it one day. But drummer Albert Bouchard described this album as an obvious return to scary sounds. The band felt they had alienated their core audience with a slick production of Mirrors and aimed to show fans their hearts were pure by returning to an odd, quirky, and mysterioso image. This shift led them to hire producer Martin Birch, known for his work with heavy acts like Deep Purple and Black Sabbath, to help capture a raw, heavier sound. One thing that's notable about this album is its literary and pop culture inspirations. For example, the opening track, Black Blade, was a direct collaboration between Eric Bloom and sci-fi author Michael Moorcock. It was inspired by Moorcock's Elric of Melgenborn saga and the soul-stealing sword Stormbringer. In addition, the album's title and cover art were inspired by British artist Richard Clifton Day. The cover features his painting Behemoth's World, depicting a futuristic Cultosaurus. The band also leaned into a fake archaeological theme for the back cover with humorous references to their own history. The album was also inspired by current events. Divine Wind was inspired by the Iran hostage crisis and the rhetoric of Ayatollah Khomeini. The title itself is a translation of kamikaze, and the lyrics focus on the great Satan war of words between Iran and the US. The song might even be oddly relevant today, and the song even led to a violent outbreak, which I'll talk about later. But that was not all. There's even a song inspired by true crime. Deadline was based on the true story of Phil King, a former booking agent for the band who was shot over a gambling debt. The band even decided to expand their reach musically. Albert Bouchard was inspired by a Steely Dan songbook to learn impossible chords, which influenced the musical complexity of tracks like Monsters. There are even songs that were inspired by some of their personal issues. For example, the Marshall Plan was created as a democratic exercise to improve band morale and address squabbles over royalties. Musically, it contains an ironic double meaning, referencing both post-World War II economic plan and the Marshall amplifiers, inspired by a young musician's dream of stardom. And finally, the album has a few people who couldn't collaborate due to distance and a new collaborator. Patti Smith and Helen Robbins, otherwise known as Helen Wheels, did not help with the album due to the Bouchard brothers moving to Connecticut. In turn, Albert decided to collaborate with his then wife, Karen Bouchard, who provided lyrics for Monsters and Hungry Boys. Now you may be wondering, how did the collaboration with Michael Moorcock on Black Blade happen? It began when vocalist and guitarist Eric Bloom sent Moorcock a fanboy letter. Yes, you heard that right, a fanboy letter. Here's how it went down. While Moorcock was living in England, he traveled to America to meet with his publisher. After receiving Bloom's letter, Moorcock reached out and suggested they meet. Bloom and Moorcock met in person and bonded, which led to Moorcock providing lyrics for the band. For Black Blade, Bloom worked with his technical musical partner, John Trivers. Bloom typically claimed responsibility for the melody and music, while Moorcock provided the signature swords and sorcery. The lyrics were written from the point of view of Alec of Melbourne, one of Moorcock's most famous characters, and center on his supernatural soul-stealing black sword, Stormbringer. This successful partnership extended beyond Black Blade, resulting in lyrics for other notable Blue Öyster Cult tracks, such as The Great Sun Jester and Veteran of Psychic Wars, the latter of which will be recovered when I do my review of Fire of Unknown Origin, this one here, which will be coming soon. I'll probably do that one next. But let's talk about one of the most important songs. So, one of the most important songs is Divine Wind, the third track on side one of Cultösaurus Erectus, written by Donald Buckdharma Roaster. And the song is an enigmatic, doom-laden gothic blues track that reflects the political tensions of the early 1980s. The song was directly inspired by the Iran hostage crisis and the rhetoric of Ayatollah Khomeini. Following the Iran Revolution, Khomeini entered a war of words with the U.S. famously labeling America the Great Satan and the Devil. The song's central hook, "If he really thinks we're the devil, then let's send him to hell," was a blunt response to this rhetoric. The title Divine Wind is an English translation of the Japanese word kamikaze. While the term is most associated with suicide bombers, it originally referred to the god winds, otherwise known as typhoons, that thwarted Mongol invasions of Japan in the 13th century. Notably, the song was originally titled Ayatollah during its development. Musically, the track is described as a brooding, slow-paced blues with menacing atmosphere. The song features piano, heavy bass, and a superb guitar solo by Buckdharma at the conclusion. While Buckdharma wrote the song, the final album version features lead vocals by Eric Bloom, who delivered a heavy shout-sang performance. The track also includes backing female vocals that some reviewers compared to a heavier version of Pink Floyd. It also has been characterized as a blistering rock track that blends a heavy blues bass with elements of space rock. But here is some more interesting trivia with the song. There was a significant shift in tone between the original demo and the final recording. According to band expert Bolle Gregmar, Buckdharma's original demo was much calmer and more indifferent, projecting a sincere, "who the hell does he think he is" attitude. This mirrored Ayatollah's own dismissive attitude toward America. Producer Martin Birch and the band opted for Eric Bloom's more aggressive vocal approach for the final version, making the song feel heavier and more confrontational. In concert, Divine Wind became a theatrical masterpiece. Joe Laro, the band's dressing room and guitar tech, would join the band on stage wearing a rubber Ayatollah Khomeini mask and playing guitar. This started as a joke to surprise the band, but Bloom encouraged it, often attacking or messing with the costume roadie during the set. The performance typically elicited a massive response from audiences who often brought their own "Fuck Iran" signs to the shows. And now I get to the main story. So the song led to a violent outbreak. In 1980, Blue Öyster Cult went out on tour with Black Sabbath, which must have been a great show. There was a show at the Lebanon Valley Speedway located in West Lebanon in the state of New York. It took place on August 8th, 1980, and there was a lot of violence and chaos. While some crew members only recalled minor disputes behind the scenes, multiple eyewitnesses detailed a night of significant property damage, injuries, and fatalities. Several attendees reported that 2 to 3 people were killed in incidents related to the concert. Specific tragedies mentioned include a person being hit by a car and another individual dying in a car wreck involving a bridge. Eyewitnesses also observed severely injured fans being carried out, including one individual whose head was wrapped in a blood-soaked t-shirt. The atmosphere was described as extremely volatile, fueled by heat, heavy drug use, and excessive beer sales. Specific incidents of rioting included torching of vehicles. For example, a crowd flipped a Cadillac into a ditch and torched it while shouting, "Fuck Iran." In a separate incident, a Dodge Aspen station wagon was flipped and burned to a charred blackened chassis after it became stuck in a ditch near a parking area. Multiple bonfires were lit in the center of the speedway, and fires were reported in the bleachers. In one bizarre instance, a 30-foot-tall black cross was lowered into a bonfire and then fell over into the crowd. When police arrived at the parking lot, the fans reportedly threw rocks and bottles at the patrol cars until they were forced to leave. One patrolman described being kicked, punched, and hit with rocks while attempting to use fire hoses to disperse rioters. Crowd pressure was intense, with fans being lifted off their feet by the surge toward the stage. Eyewitnesses even reported that security guards and roadies struggled to keep fans back from the chain link fence in front of the stage. Some roadies reportedly used bats and sticks to hit the knuckles of fans who were trying to hold on to the perimeter fence. The show had to be stopped multiple times, with bands threatening to leave if the crowd did not step back. The chaos was so severe that the owner of the Lebanon Valley Speedway reportedly refused to host similar large-scale rock concerts again. News of the violence and subsequent cancellation of future shows at the venue was widely reported. In local media, one crew member noted the general difficulty of the tour, mentioning that being associated with Black Sabbath at the time often led to guilt by association regarding unruly audiences. But after all that smoke cleared, the album Cultösaurus Erectus was generally received as a return to form, and a musical comeback after the critical and commercial disappointment of the band's previous more pop-oriented record, Mirrors. While it succeeded in restoring their heavy reputation, its commercial performance was ultimately viewed with some frustration by the band. The album was a gold certified record, which means selling over 500,000 units. It performed better than its predecessor Mirrors. It reached number 12 on the UK Albums Chart and reached 34 on the US Billboard 200. Despite its gold status, the album produced no hit singles. Tracks like The Marshall Plan became FM radio's favorites, but none achieved major chart success. While the record itself stalled commercially, Blue Öyster Cult continued to fill large stadiums and sports arenas during the supporting Black and Blue co-headlining tour with Black Sabbath. However, attendance varied by region. For instance, the band bombed in Spokane, drawing only half the audience they had the previous year. Critics and fans were largely divided by the album's schizophrenic nature, as it attempted to balance heavy metal roots with polished AOR styles. But on a positive note, many fans and critics praised the record for turning the weirdness dial back up and returning to the murky, mysterious spirit of their early years. It was hailed as one of the band's most progressive outings, noted for experimenting with jazz interludes and complex time signatures in songs like Monsters. In a surprise move, the Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal gave it a perfect 10 out of 10 rating, but not everything was sunshine and roses. The band's longtime manager and producer Sandy Pearlman stated he did not like the album, feeling it was only 2 or 3 songs deep and lacked the cumulative aggregate impression and synergy of the earlier records. In addition, some contemporary reviewers were harsh. The Boston Globe described the band as a ghost of their former selves, and that has sunk into fumbling bombast and unintentional self-parody. Another critic labeled it as the nadir of the first 9 albums, calling it lifeless and monotonous. The album had some highs and lows. For example, the first 3 tracks, Black Blade, Monsters, and Divine Wind, were almost universally cited as the album's highlights, and they were seen as representing the band at a zenith. In contrast, Side 2 received mixed reviews. The Marshall Plan was criticized by some fans as being innocuous and insipid, while Hungry Boys was occasionally dismissed as filler or embarrassing synth rock. My body's in me, keep looking for this stuff. If you want to check out more of Blue Öyster Cult, check out this video where I did an unboxing of this box set right here, and I talk about the albums. I believe I ranked the 5 albums. And thanks for watching. Please like the video. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.